What happens when you ignore development and chase pawn moves while facing one of the sharpest minds in chess history? In this 1933 correspondence battle, a young Paul Keres punishes Verbac's slow play with a beautifully engineered attack, culminating in a queen sacrifice and a rare double bishop mate. Keres played white, Verbac played black. Let's begin. Pawn moves to d4. Pawn moves to d5. Pawn goes to e4. Keres goes for the aggressive Blackmar-Demar gambit, offering a pawn for development. Pawn to s6. Verbac declines the gambit and prefers to play the French defense. Bishop moves to e3. A very rare move. Keres insists on giving black a pawn. Pawn captures pawn on e4. Knight to d2. Attacking the black pawn on e4. Pawn goes to f5. Defending the pawn, but also creating weaknesses. Furthermore, Keres has two developed pieces versus 0 for black. Pawn to f3, challenging black's awkward pawn formation. Pawn takes pawn on f3. Knight captures pawn on f3. A third white piece enters the fight. Knight goes to f6. Verbac start developing his pieces. Bishop to d3. Preparing to castle next. The bishop would also have been fine on c4. Pawn to c5. Another pawn move, which is delaying black's development again. Bishop goes to d6. The best move would have been to bring the bishop out and prepare castling on the next move. Kingside castle. A fine move, but even more challenging had been. Queen to e2. Places the queen on the e-file and opening up for the possibility to castle queenside as well. Pawn takes pawn on d4. Knight takes pawn on d4. Keres has 5 developed pieces, while a pawn down. This is a lot compared to the lonely black knight that has entered the game. However, Verbac decides to make his 8th pawn move in the opening, and it was one too many. Pawn to f4, with the idea to fork the rook and knight with e5 on the next move. Rook takes pawn on f4. Keres had seen the fork idea in his analysis and had looked deeper than his opponent. If white plays, bishop captures pawn on f4. Queen takes knight on d4 check. Loses a piece. Pawn moves to e5. Bishop goes to b5 check. Keres exploits that black is undeveloped and starts his attack. Another option and even better move had been rook takes knight on f6. Pawn takes rook on f6. Knight jumps to f4. Pawn takes knight on d4. Queen moves to h5 check. King moves to e7. Bishop to f4. White is down a full rook, but look at the black pieces. White is completely winning here. King to f7. The final blunder of the game. A more resourceful try had been. Bishop to d7. Rook takes knight on f6. Queen takes rook on f6. Queen goes to h5 check. Pawn to g6. Queen moves to e2. White is down the exchange, but has a safe king and a big lead in development. Black cannot take the knight on d4 because the discovered check, bishop to g5. Pawn takes knight on d4. Bishop to g5 check. Queen to h5 check. Pawn to g6. Bishop moves to c4 check. Setting up a trap for the black king. King moves to g7. Not spotting the next move. Queen goes to h6 check. Keres gives up his queen to achieve a checkmating pattern. King takes queen on h6. The king is forced to take rook to h4 check. With a double check, king goes to g7. Bishop to h6 checkmate. The two bishops checkmate the black king. It is worth noticing that Verbac still has 6 pieces on the back rank in the final position. So, remember to develop your pieces in the opening, and do not get tempted into only moving the pawns like Verbac.